listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
It's a spooky edition of the GM Shuffle as we welcome you in. The big guy, Michael Lombardi. Bella's drunk.
Yeah.
You know that over in Jersey.
I'm going to be too. I'm going to be Joel Embiid for Halloween. I'm going to be out at practice. I'm not going to practice today. I'm not going to do anything. That's who I am for Halloween. I'm going to be 7 feet tall, sit in my lawn chair, just watch everybody collect $200 million and say thank you very much for the all-time great con. That's what I want to be for Halloween. They lost to the Pistons last night. Not that I'm bitter about that at all. I watched it. I turned it off, Patrick. I had enough. I just can't do it. And of course, the lies continue. As you know, the lies continue. Well, he's on a program. He's rested. I mean, at some point, when does somebody say enough is enough? Like, you're paid to play. I know this is a football podcast,
no,
but I just have to.
No, we have to. And you lost at home to an all-time bad team in the Pistons.
Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for Nick Nurse. He's trying to piece together two teams. He's trying to piece together a team that doesn't have two players. Meanwhile, he's got no cotton. I mean, it's like ridiculous. How do you win like that? Like, when does this ever work? Explain this to me. When does this relax, take a vacation, don't do much, scrimmage a little bit? Maybe we'll use your game here, game there. Make sure you drink your Shirley Temples. I mean, when does this work? When does it work?
I thought, listen, if you're going as Joel Embiid, I thought you were going to say you're going as a ghost because he disappears.
There you go. There you go. That's what I'll do. I'll go as a ghost. Yeah. I mean, are you kidding me? This is a Ponzi scheme if there's ever been one. I mean, it is. It's a Ponzi scheme. Again, another one. The process was a Ponzi. All they do is produce Ponzi schemes out of that building. It's a joke. I mean, how people go watch him, I have and I did like an idiot. I watched last night for 2 minutes, and I watched the first quarter, and I mean, it's a joke. I mean, anybody thinks that team is going to beat the best teams in the NBA, you're smoking something better than I am.
Well, the great news is there's only 78 games to go for the 76ers, and we are starting week 9 in the NFL. Maybe Anthony Richardson is friends with Joel Embiid, just kind of resting. We'll get to him in just a little bit as Flacco's in, of course, Michael, for the Colts. But here's where I want to start with Thursday Night Football with the Texans at the Jets. At least we have to admit betting is goofy sometimes, right? Because this number is up to the Jets 2.5. Let's just be clear about what's being bet here. What's being bet is Aaron Rodgers and a new kicker. Because, yes, I know Houston's offensive line is struggling. Yes, I understand the wide receivers are banged up. But you're betting a team that just gave up 18 second-half points to Jacoby Brissett. And, again, a Houston team that's 6-2. Let's talk about this one tonight.
And a Houston team that has forced 9 turnovers in the last 4 weeks. A Houston team that hasn't turned the ball over. A Houston team that almost beat Green Bay throwing for 55 yards. Now, look, Houston's got injuries, and I get that's why this line's where it is. Because this line should be Houston favored by 4 at least. 3.5, to me, there's no reason for it. On my numbers, let me pull my numbers up here, but on my numbers, the only reason it is where it is because of the injuries, right? I mean, I had this as a 4.88 game. And so, but again, you got to take into consideration the injuries that are going. This Houston team is very good. They're the best first. They're very good at forcing turnovers. What they do really well, which is a problem for the Jets, is they're the best team in the National Football League in forcing negative plays on defense. So now you're in 2nd and 16. And what happens when that happens? Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter start coming off the corner, and all of a sudden Aaron Rodgers, who Gottschalk said last week, can't move. And it's true. He really can't. I mean, think about this. His numbers have dramatically gone down since 21. We could hide it all we want. And look, I the guy's a Hall of Fame player. I don't mean to dismiss this, but his yards per attempt has gone from 7.7 and 21 to 6.8 and 22 to 6.7 and 24. I rest my case.
You've got a Texans defense, the highest pressure rate in the league. You've got no Vera Tucker. You've got an immobile quarterback at this point. Again, I know the Texans 5 wins, 6 points or fewer, so tight wins. But that defense, like you meant, has been turning over teams. Tonight, it does appear that you're going to see a lot of mixing. Would you agree?
Yes, I think so. Because, look, since Jeff Albrecht has become the coach, this team has given up over 400 yards on the ground against their opponents. They have struggled to play really good run defense. Now, if Houston can run the ball on them, with the Houston offensive line last week was a total disaster, right?
Yeah. Green,
the first-round pick, got benched. The right tackle, Howard's not very good. Shaq Mason is an older player. The center isn't very good. I mean, they really got the crap beat out of them. It only took Shane Steichen's incompetence to throw the ball at the end of the first half is why the Colts lost that. We could blame everything on Anthony Richardson, and certainly he does, but he called that pass play at the end of the half that gave him a 7-point lead at halftime. That's on Steichen. I mean, I don't know how many more times Steichen is going to screw up the Colts where somebody doesn't – instead of saying he's a great play caller, how about he's a horrendous game manager. He makes Kellen Moore look like goddamn Bill Parcells at managing games. I mean, seriously.
Careful.
It's so bad.
It really is bad. And frankly, we'll get to Richardson. A lot of drops in that game. I'm not saying the kid's ready, and I do believe in starting Flacco, but let's put that we'll put a pin in that. Just so, again, maybe they were listening to the GM shuffle the Jets, because they did put Zerline on the IR, finally put him out of his misery. It's either going to be Riley Patterson or Spencer Schrader tonight for the Jets. So we shall see. 42. By the way,
what they should do, Patrick, they should get a camera crew out there at the Meadowlands today around 2:00 when they're sitting there and they're watching. They're going to have a kickoff today. Bobby Flay won't be attending, but they're going to have a kickoff, right? They're going to have a kickoff for who's going to win the job. They'll probably go over to the Meadowlands. They'll probably at 2:00 somewhere around there. They'll have their kickoff, and maybe they'll get the Giada to come watch it too. I don't know, but then they're going to watch and see which one kicks under pressure. I mean, that's what's going to happen. And then they're going to go with it. I mean, it's a short week. I get it, but you need to have these two kick in the stadium where the wind is going to blow. It's incredible weather here in the East Coast. Today it's Halloween night. It's going to be 70. It's 75 degrees out there already. So weather's not going to be a factor, and these kickers should be able to kick it. So Zerline can't make a 50-yard kick. He's 0 for 1 in that area. He's 0 for 5 between the 30 and the 50. So this can only be an upgrade, Patrick.
Well, if Giada's coming, I might jump on a plane. I'm just saying. 2.5.
She's probably doing a coin toss. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I'll be watching. If it's 2.5 right now, if it does touch 3, it's going to get bought back. But that is crazy. Now, 84% of the bets on the Texans, 85% of the money. So whatever sharp is, we always have fun with it. There's a reason the money or the line is moving the Jets' way, because it was 1.5 yesterday. It's up to 2.5 at a couple of shops. It's a crazy number. 42.5 on the total. Do you see a lower scoring game here?
I would think so, but my concern here is the linebacking play of the Texans. They've missed both starting inside, both linebackers, and so that's a real issue. But look, the Jets haven't scored very many points. I mean, let's be clear here. The Jets have only scored over 17 points, twice against the Patriots and once against the Tennessee Titans. I mean, this whole idea that the Jets are just going to put their key in their ignition and turn it on and all of a sudden become this incredible team, we haven't seen it. We haven't seen it yet. And so we know that they struggle, And the other thing I think that's a real issue in terms of this is the Jets have only forced 3 turnovers in the last 5 weeks. They've only forced 6 all year. That was one of their big issues last year. They couldn't. And so can the Jets run the football effectively tonight? I think that's the big problem. But in terms of the over, look, if the Jets are able to get the ball in the red zone, the Texans are one of the worst red zone teams in all of football. They're 30th in the red zone. You should score touchdowns. But where I'm really concerned about this is the fact that the Jets will have a hard time getting down there. It's hard to put 8 good plays against the Texans together. And I think Fairbairn is unbelievable. I mean, that's the one thing about this game. They win close games because the guy's 9 for 10 on 50-yard kicks. Think about that. He's 9 for 10 on 50. What do you think this record would be for the Texans if he was at 90% on 50-yard kicks? You take those 27 points out of the Texans. They're already listed 9-point on point differential. You said it perfectly. They've won they win close games. One game they got blown out by Minnesota. One game they blew out New England. So, look, I just don't think you can count them out.
Let's talk big picture with the Texans. So they're 6-2. Steph Diggs, who is on an expiring contract, so maybe played his last down in Houston, he tore his ACL. Obviously, Stroud misses Nico Collins. So questions at wide receiver, are they going to make a move? It feels like the Ravens got the receiver the Texans could use in DIONTAE Johnson.
Yeah, you got to. Well, they think they've got, they've paid a lot of money for Robert Woods. They've been carrying Robert Woods at his salary, and it's been everybody wondered he's a fourth receiver on the team, and they're paying him a ton of money. So they need him and John Mechie, who they drafted in the second round. They need those two guys to come through for them. And Tank Dell needs to take a Mother May I step up. Now I'm sure they're going to get Collins back soon, but Stroud's been. I mean, last week I thought he was great. He made throws that he had to make. Even when it went out, they're just not an explosive offense. But tonight, it's got to be Mixon, right? They've got to run that outside zone. And look, if you're Bobby Slowick, you know how San Francisco blocked them, where they got angles on everybody in the run game, and they did a real good job of running the football on this jet front. And you got to feel like that's how you're going to have to win the game. And that's why it lends itself to the underplay.
All right, so this one is fascinating because it's also on Halloween. I need to know the layout at the Lombardi crib. Is Berman coming over dressed up? I know he is. Is Millie getting dressed?
Yeah, he's coming.
What are you handing out? What's happening tonight?
Good question. Okay, so I'm by myself. I'm a one-arm paper hanger here. I'm taking care of two dogs. I got Halloween. Millie's out there naturally with the grandkids for Halloween, so God knows that. So anyway, I'm here. It's beautiful weather. I'll be on the front porch from 5 to 7 handing out. I got big Reese Brother peanut butter cups, and I got big Hershey bars, so I got that. No way we're giving out shitty candy. No chance, all right? Big candy. I'm on the porch, and then I'm going to go over to Berman's house and have pizza and have a fire out in his yard because he kind of lives on a street where you got to really work to get there to get candy, and I don't know if a lot of people do. He typically doesn't get a lot of them. But I'm going to be on the porch, and there's nothing better, Patrick. As a grandfather and a father, there's these little girls that come in the costume. It's the best. They're so adorable. It's so adorable. Yeah, I mean, I love it. It's a great night. I mean, I don't know how you can't like Halloween. Who doesn't like Halloween, Patrick? Seriously.
If you don't
like
it's the best. Nobody, if you don't like Halloween,
I don't love
got
it.
something.
I know it's a better holiday, but it's the best.
Big candy bars there. Michael Lombardi. GM Shuffle. We're coming back with NFL news and notes next.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Well, if you're floating around Ocean City tonight on Halloween, you see Casper. That's not Joel Embiid. That's Michael Lombardi. That's his favorite player, handing out the Reese's with your boy Berman. We welcome you back, GM Shuffle. News and notes presented by Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka. Please drink responsibly, which I'm guessing you and Berman may pour up a cocktail handing out those treats tonight. Now, Anthony Richardson is going to have. I was going to say Anthony Richardson may have an opportunity to have a cocktail because Joe Flacco is starting. But remember, this is the point about Richardson. He was so young when he was drafted. He was so raw when he was drafted. He had started 12 games. Jaden Daniels started 50-plus games in college and is completing 72% of his passes. So Colts and Vikings, Minnesota opens, Michael, 6.5. The move to Flacco brings it down to that dead zone of 5. Let's start with the move, Richardson being benched.
He had to be benched. I mean, you and I did shows where I can remember telling you I thought Richardson was going to be the Heisman Trophy. I thought he was going to be the Heisman Trophy. After that Utah game, I thought he was sensational, right? And then the next week, he wasn't so good. And the week after, he wasn't so good. And we did shows up until we couldn't believe that he was the 4th pick overall in the draft. I mean, look, there was no evidence on his college tape. His combine tape was sensational. There's no question. And this is a big, fast, athletic man. There's no question. But you go back and watch him in high school, which I did, and it's a little bit of the same. It's great talent, inconsistent. And so when you take him 4th overall, you can't think he's plug and play. You just can't. You have to find a way to utilize him and develop him. And to me, what he's proven so far is he's so inconsistent, there's no way you could go with this. There's just no way, right? And so Flacco has to be the starter. The team knows it. Everybody knows it. They can't bury their heads in the sand and say, we're going to keep continuing like the Browns were doing by saying Deshaun Watson's playing really well. You guys just don't see it. He's playing really well. Oh, by the way, as soon as he came out of the game, Winston threw for 300 yards, just like Flacco threw for 300 yards last year. So I think, to me, this is the best thing for the kid. And I think there's no reason to put him back in the game. He's not ready to play football. He's 44% completion percentage in a league where you can get it up to 65. 44% is back in the day in the 60s when, when they were beating the shit out of the quarterback. I mean, that's a bad number. I think the kid's a good kid. He works hard. But Patrick, you watch him. I haven't seen 1 ounce of improvement in this kid since he got there. I haven't. Now, maybe it's there and I just can't see it, but I haven't seen him improve. Like, I can't tell you what he does well. That's my problem.
I mean, he's a freak athletically. We know he has a crazy arm. His arm talent's crazy. He's just inaccurate. So let me ask you this, because I have to. Steichen said he's going to sit for the rest of the year, so here comes Flacco. How much of this has to do with the fact that he pulled himself out of the game? And I'm asking you from inside the locker room's perspective. Do you feel as though the vets or those in the locker room probably felt a certain way about Richardson's decision?
I don't know about that. I think, to me, the vets in the locker room just felt like this guy doesn't give us a chance to win. He's too inconsistent. I think they all feel like, I think sometimes we tend to misjudge this by the players. They all feel like we feel. He's really talented, but man, he's not ready to play yet. He's costing us games. Now, Steichen's costing them games too. Let's not dismiss that. For all his power as a great play caller and a play designer, he's a disaster when it comes to managing the end of the half, the middle 8. He's horrible at. But I think, to me, they're saving him from the locker room, because the more they play him and the more the Colts lose these games, the more the players are going to really blame it on him. And it's not all on him, but a lot of it is on him, and a lot of it's on the coach. I mean, you just can't. I know he's a great athlete, but what does he do well? Is he a bootleg? Is he Lamar comes in his rookie year and leads them to the playoffs. Like, Drake May comes in and looks a lot better. Like, you just can't, I know he needs more playing time, but Drake May didn't play a lot of games either. Lamar did. I got that. But usually, isn't it it's a little Jordan Love-ish to me. Like, when Jordan Love came in a game against Kansas City, he looked horrible. Like, I think they're better off just keeping him. Like, what's the rush? He's not good enough to play right now. He's like a guy who's a baseball prospect who shows great talent but can't hit a curveball, right? Send him to the minor leagues, let him play at AAA, let him play at AA, and see if he can eventually break out. Like, if I were the GM of the Colts, every Wednesday and Thursday after practice, we would have development period, and he would take 15 reps on Thursday, 15 reps on Wednesday, and he would take a ton of reps all during the scout. He would take every scout team rep, and I would tell the kid, look, I'm charting you on completions, and I would coach the shit out of him on scout team to work on his fundamentals, his techniques, and all those things. To me, this bullshit, well, he's got to play to get better. No, you can practice to get better too.
The irony of Flacco taking over for Richardson, it's almost like the philosophy behind rookie quarterbacks shifted with Matt Ryan. Remember, with Atlanta as a rookie going to the postseason, that same year, Flacco with the Ravens. They started as rookies, they go to the postseason. You think back to Steve McNair, you think back to others who sat. You even think about Aaron Rodgers, who's playing tonight on Thursday Night Football. The development of the young quarterback, do you think it's being handled correctly, or is it just case by case?
I think it's all based on the other quarterback. So when a guy plays good as a rookie, you want your guy to get in the game, right? It's not self-evaluated, and I think a lot of this has no plan. We're taking this guy, and we've got to play him. What's the plan on how we're going to play him? What's the developmental program going to look like? What's every day? When you draft Anthony Richardson, what was every day's plan to get him better? And do we have benchmarks to measure his progress? Like, that's the biggest thing to me on development is what's the benchmarks? What are we doing? Like, it isn't we're going to make him a benchmark starter. What's the difference? How can we improve his accuracy? How can we improve his fundamentals? Again, this is like minor league baseball. We have to work on him within the system. There's that great book, The Yankee Way, where they talk a lot about how they were able to install the systems of the Yankees farm system correlated with the major league team. They wanted them to do all the things that they could do. And I think ultimately that's what you have to do in player development. But Just because C.J. Stroud starts as a rookie, that shouldn't be Anthony Richardson starts as a rookie. They're two different players, and we can only screw up their development. Look, I just don't think Richardson has really developed, and this is the hardest part about being in personnel is you can keep clinging to this development shit, and the season and the career goes down the drain. You know, it just never develops. Trey Lance never develops, right? At what point do you say this is a blown pick? You know, Trey Lance gave every play this summer in the preseason. The Cowboys, he's not more ready to play now than he was when he got every rep. He's just not good enough. Is he good enough to be a backup? Sure, I'm sure he is. Is he good enough to be a team to lead himself? I doubt it. That's the problem. What's the standard? What's the benchmark we're looking for? And I don't think they've really hit it. I don't know. I don't watch practice, so I don't know.
I have to ask you, because this is fascinating. Take yourself inside the Panthers front office. You're Dan Morgan now. Congratulations.
I don't want to be him. I know you him. I can't be that bad.
And speaking of drinks, the owner might throw a drink at you. But
yeah,
if you are, the Bryce Young situation is going to start to get weird. Number 1 overall pick. And then all of a sudden, I have no clue if the kid's confidence is ruined. But they have a decision to make in this offseason. They have a legit decision to make.
They really don't. They have to draft a quarterback. I mean, he's proven he can't play. I mean, he's proven it. To me, they have a bigger issue. Do they really want to go down the Dan Morgan, Dave Canales road? I mean, Dan Morgan just traded Dante Johnson away to Baltimore.
Nothing.
And for basically a pick swap that's going to end up being within 10 picks of each other. He could have held on to Johnson and got a compensatory pick. He could have held on to him. Now, if you said to me, well, we got rid of him because we're a salary dump. Okay, I get that. I mean, but this is a horrible trade. It's a horrible trade. It's a disastrous trade. You basically gave Baltimore a compensatory pick by trading him over there. You could have hung on to him. I mean, say the kid goes out there, say you don't play him. I would have said to Tepper, look, we're not going to play him. We're going to keep him because maybe somebody next year will give him a deal to go in the compensatory pool. Isn't it worth it for us? I would think it would be. I don't know who's making decisions in Carolina. I really don't. I have no idea. I mean, I don't know how much we talked about this on Monday, but have you ever, I know Sean Payton called this offense bad. I mean, if you're the owner of the Panthers, don't you say to yourself, boy, that's really an indictment. Maybe I'm doing something wrong here.
If you read the Tampa quotes after Canales was hired as the Carolina Panthers head coach, they didn't feel like they were missing much from a play caller perspective. I'm just saying. So let's go back.
And look, please, no, real quick. I mean, Pete Carroll hired Canales as a strength coach. Dave's probably a great guy, but Pete never promoted Canales. Pete kept bringing in Brian Schottenheimer, Shane Waldron. He had Canales on the staff. He never promoted him. That tells you a lot.
Upside, Colts, Mr. Flacco in, and this is for our producer, Elliot. So upside at 4-4. I mean, they don't do a ton well, if we're being fair, about a 4-4 team. They're looking up at Houston 6-2. What's the upside with Flacco?
Well, he's going to be consistent for him. He's going to give them some opportunities to have their offense. I mean, we'll see Taylor at his best. I mean, look, he brought those receivers to life, right? I mean, before he got on the field, everybody said, well, they need a number 1 receiver to help Richardson. Remember that? That's all they kept saying. Pittman's a good player, but they need more skill guys. All of a sudden, Alex Pierce shows up. Downs has become great. The quarterback can make the receivers look a lot better when you have somebody who knows where he's going with the ball. Worst thing that can happen to the Colts is if Flacco gets hurt. Then they're going to be picking in the top 5.
Yeah, Flacco, it's funny because he saved the Browns last year. Can he save? And he's at a resurgence, and he's playing well. I mean, you look at his numbers. He's throwing for
really good
plus touchdown. I mean, he really has played well. Now, he might struggle against Minnesota because with the blitz, he's not necessarily mobile. That's an interesting one with the Vikings laying 5.
Yeah, that is. I mean, one thing Brian Flores, he said, he gave a lot of love to Richard because of what he did in that game in terms of how tough he is to tackle. But now he knows that the quarterback is going to throw the ball from behind the center on every single snap. And when you know that as a defensive coordinator, that makes your game plan a hell of a lot easier.
Yep, Meagher airs back. Presented by Smirnoff. NFL News and Notes continues right here. GM Shuffle. We've got the trade deadline coming up. What has the big guy heard? We'll come back and talk about it.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Okay, happy Halloween, GM Shuffle, Michael Lombardi. I'm Patrick Meagher. We welcome you back. Week 9, which sounds crazy. NFL kicks off tonight in Jersey, where the weather is pristine and the candy bars there in Ocean City are flowing. Of course, the Jets hosting the Houston Texans. Michael Lombardi, so we've got the trade deadline coming up. I believe it's on Election Day. Don't go there. The Panthers sent DIONTAE Johnson to the Ravens. So a couple things with this. One, why did Dan Morgan act so soon? Shouldn't he hold the player and just wait to see if he gets more offers? I digress. Secondly, as far as Baltimore, okay, maybe they add depth at wide receiver. What they need is depth in the defensive backfield. Like, quietly, that defense has not been playing well, specifically in the backfield.
No question. I mean, look, this Raven team in the fourth quarter is a disaster, and they can't get off the field this week without Marlon Humphrey. They lost Michael Pierce in that game last time, and Brett Urban they lost. I mean, to me, I would have thought he would have reinforced it. Like, I did not think they needed another offense, another wide receiver. That wasn't what was screaming to me when I watched them. Maybe the Bateman drop that hit him in the face mask motivated him. For Carolina, I don't understand it. In Carolina, like, what are we doing here? We have David Moore, we have Leggett, the draft pick, we have Coker, a college free agent, and we have Mingo, a second-round pick that Dan Morgan was responsible for drafting. Like, what are we doing? Like, what's our receiving core look like? Then you want Bryce Young to look good? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of hard. I mean, I don't know why they won't trade Miles Sanders, right? I mean, he spent a second-round pick. Dan Morgan spent a seventh-round pick on Jonathan Brooks, who was injured coming out of Texas A&M. Just trade Dan Moore. Just trade him now. You know, you say, well, you know, he's only making $4 million a year. I mean, he's got $2 million in roster bonuses that are probably on a pro game. I don't know. I have to look at them. But to me, just get rid of him. I mean, what do we hold on to him for? You know, it's like, to me, it's ridiculous. I don't know what nobody can explain the plan in Carolina. Like, if you can't explain the plan in 15 words or less, you don't have a plan. Like, that's any business, right? If you can't explain what your business is in 15 words or less, you don't have a business. If you can't explain your book in 15 words or less, you shouldn't write the book. I mean, it's the 15-word test, right? And this Carolina, there's no plan. I don't know what their plan is. Their plan was, we're going to beef up the offensive line. And their plan was to hire Dave Canales. That's not a plan. That's a hope. You never confuse hope for a plan. But what is the plan? You know, and you got Dan Morgan operating this plan. I mean, come on, give me a break. Oh, well, he was in Buffalo or Seattle. Like, that really makes him a legitimate team builder? I don't get it. I really don't. I don't understand. Well, of course, I don't get a lot about the National Football League, but you would think Carolina would be sellers, right? You would think they would be. Now, I don't know if they'll trade J.C. Horn, but he's the 21 pick. So you got, you know, he's going to be entering his option year. And would you trade him now, or are you picking up the option? See, that's the question you got to ask yourself, right? Are you trading him, or are you picking up the option? Because you might as well just become the bad news bears and just figure out you're going to have the first pick of the draft and get yourself the best quarterback. I mean, you might as well.
So Darashal. So Michael, this was maybe under the radar because it's a tackle, but Darashal goes down for the Vikings, which is huge, right? And so they run out and grab Cam Robinson from the Jags, not equal player, but they needed to do something.
Right. They got somebody to come in there and play. They gave up nothing for him, you know, and look, let's face it. I mean, Trent Baalke, he thinks he's got a really talented team. Trent Baalke drafted Walker Little in the second round. He thought he was better than Joe Staley coming out of college. So he thinks Walker Little's a good player, even though he hasn't played very well. So now he can just dump Cam. It was a salary dump. He dumped Cam Robinson. And if you're Minnesota, you say, look, we get it. His tape's not very good. I get that. But we're going to coach him up and we're going to see if he's better. I mean, the worst one is if you're the New York Football Giants, you have Evan Neal on the bench, and meanwhile you're bringing guys in off the street that you won't even put Evan Neal on the bench. John Mara came out and said, oh, we're definitely not making any changes to coaching and front office. Well, the front office, the last two first-round picks haven't played worth a shit. I mean, Banks, they benched him in the game the other night on Monday night, and then Neal can't even get on the field. Like, I don't understand it. Like, to me, the Giants should be sellers. Like, they can't trade Neal for nothing. They couldn't get anything for Evan Neal. That's how bad that is. That's how bad that pick is, and everybody in the league knows it, too. Everybody in the league knows it's a blown pick, except the Giants are covering it up.
We should probably turn back and talk about the Steelers on Monday night, 26-18. So the Steelers somehow moved to 6-2. Russ, actually, your boy, he was cooking. What do you call it? The French Laundry up in
No, he's still a short order cook. The way he's operating there, it's more of a diner type cook. It's good, though. It's a good diner, right? Used to be a great diner in San Francisco. I forget the name of it, but it was right by the Embarcadero over there. It was great. Oh, the Fog City Diner, it was called. It was tremendous. I don't know if it's still there or not, but it was great. But he's kind of, I would say he's the head chef at the Fog City Diner. That's what he's doing right now. It's not the French Laundry. It ain't the French Laundry. But it's good enough, right? I mean, there's the perfect example. You know, they bring him in. You play within our system. We don't hear about Russ saying, I got to cook in my system, right? We're running the ball. We're taking advantage of it. But look, I mean, I don't know what happened in that game. I thought, and one of the reasons I took it in Russo and I ended up losing was because I thought that Dayball had a really good idea on how to attack Pittsburgh. And I think the first half proved me right on that. But for some reason, they decided to stop chipping all over on TJ Watt and chipping the tackles. Like, for some reason, they got away from it. But the play that killed me, no one talks about it. They never mention it on the broadcast. The one that killed anybody who took the Giants and laid the 6 was when the Giants had the ball to start the second half. They moved it all the way down. They're in field goal range, okay? And what happens? Daniel Jones takes 2 sacks. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. If you're a coach in high school, I don't give a shit. If you're a coach in college, I don't give a shit. In your quarterback room, you should hand out a paper or you should have it up on a board. Here's where we can't take a sack. It's against the rules. It's against our beliefs to take a sack here. And, of course, Daniel Jones takes 2 of them. Those are 3 points he
I know that it was huge, and it was momentum too. I don't know if you were watching on Monday the Manning cast with our boy Bill Belichick. They were apoplectic about the passing schemes as far as the Giants and the inability to chip on TJ Watt. Bill said he's got one move. It's the best move in football, but he's coming straight at you. You have to chip him. They can go nuts. How do you not scheme that up?
They did it in the first half. I mean, they did a really good job. Bill was talking about screens and straws. Just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. They're going to keep running up the field. They're not going to change. It's just they get, you know what happens? Discipline. You get discipline. And look, I said it at the time. Scott Novak kills you. Look, he's horrible. Let's face it. He never gets a playoff game, Scott Novak, but they keeps coming back. Monday Night Football, we got to watch Scott Novak. It's ridiculous. So, look, I just think, to me, it's one of those where this is why the fans don't really get a peek inside of it, is it takes discipline to stick with your game plan. You start to panic, oh, we can do this or we can do that. No, it takes a head coach in the headset to say, hey, look, I don't want to call this. You know, if I could hear Belichick in the headset when the ball was in field goal range in a field goal game, hey, look, we can't take a sack here. We can't take a sack here. We can't. And that affects the play call. That affects the play call, too. It's just, see, everybody thinks game management is when do we kick a field goal? When do we go for it on 4th down? That's not game management. That's game selection. That's what you select to do. What's game management is how you manage the game during the game. You know, it's like, it's baseball. I want to throw curveballs to this guy. I want to throw a fastball. It's that. And so when you go in and get away from your ability to, you were doing really well. You were playing within the confines of who you are. And then all of a sudden, the second half, the Giants started to come, oh, we're the Rams. We can block anybody. Meanwhile, Daniel Jones is melting away. They had a chance to win the game.
But that is the funny part, because that's a conundrum. When you have a player like Jones, who at times Eli and Peyton were just raving over ball placement and his ability to push the ball down the field. But then, like you said, he takes the 2 sacks. So if you're an organization like the Giants, what the hell do you do with that player?
You look, this whole idea he pushed the ball down the field is a joke. I mean, the guy's never averaged over 7 yards per attempt. I don't know which sheet Eli and Peyton were looking at. I mean, that's the fact. I mean, the guy's never – I mean, I've been bitching about that. Do you realize this? The Giants lead the National Football League in 5-minute drives. That's not good. I mean, they've controlled the ball. They lead the league in 5-minute drives, and they're like 28th in points scored because they can control the ball because they dink, they dunk, they do this. But they're a horse and buggy offense. I mean, they also have a Wells Fargo sign next to their fucking helmets because of the Wells Fargo fucking cargo train. I mean, come on. Don't throw it down the field. They could. Fuck, he had a guy wide open in cover 2 window, and he fucking throws it over the guy's head by 10 yards. I mean, that was a huge play there, too. That was points. He completes that pass, they're in field goal range. Look, it's ridiculous to shield for somebody that we live in this world where the numbers you can't hide from them. You can't hide from Deshaun Watson sucks. You can't hide from Daniel Jones don't throw the ball down the field.
So Detroit is up to 3.5 at Green Bay. Big Daddy alert. Jordan Love, Jair Alexander, Josh Jacobs are all – those 3 did not practice on Wednesday. So we shall see. My assumption is Love is going to play. I don't know if you've heard anything, but 3.5, and Detroit's played well in Green Bay as of late.
You know, I thought this was kind of a strange game. I thought, how could they be 3.5 favorites here? And then when I ran my numbers, I mean, I had it that Detroit should be a 2.5-point favorite in the game. It's getting a little bit higher now, but I think that higher is related to why Love is playing. I mean, look, yesterday's practice, I think what we have to understand is the Thursday practice is more important than the Wednesday, right? The Thursday one is really telling. If he's on the field, if he's taking any kind of reps on Thursday, he's going to play, right? If he's not even out there on a Thursday, then I think it's probably hard for him to come out there because, look, if he can't move and Detroit knows he can't move, if he's got limitations, you know, then it's going to be a problem. Look, I don't know what game. Detroit went into the Green Bay last year and whooped them. And then Green Bay came into Detroit on Thanksgiving Day and whooped them. So it's like, you know, what's it going to be? I think Detroit's really physicality. Green Bay has done a great job of turning the ball over, though. That's what they've been great at.
That Thanksgiving performance by Love was special. And that's something you hold on to in primetime when you watch that in Detroit. A great performance. We shall see. For bettors, a great note from Michael Lombardi. Look to Thursday's practices. When we come back, we'll get to NFL Week 9 top games right here, GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome back to the GM Shuffle. Michael Lombardi, I'm Patrick Meagher, presented by Smirnoff. We do game days. Please drink responsibly. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Week 9 tonight, Jersey, the Jets hosting Houston. The Jets right now up to 2.5, which is that's fascinating on a Halloween. It's fascinating. Like, that is, sometimes you take a step back. We've been doing this forever. You take a step back and you realize betting is hilarious. Because that is betting a quarterback. That is betting Aaron Rodgers. And to be fair, bless you, and to be fair to Aaron Rodgers, he's played fine. He's not the same quarterback. We understand, but he's been fine. But if you're laying 2.5 with the Jets tonight, I understand the offensive line with Houston. I understand the wide receiver issues. That is betting a quarterback. Because what have you seen outside of maybe good pressure from the defensive front? What have you seen from the Jets in this 5-game losing streak that gives you confidence tonight? Seriously.
Nothing. You've seen nothing. I mean, they lost to a bad New England team. I mean, somebody had to win. They're playing poorly. I mean, we haven't talked about the kicking game, right? I mean, that they haven't played good in that. Now they're going to have a new kicker. We know that. But, like, there's nothing to reinforce you to the Jets other than this idea that we thought they were going to be a good team. You know, we called them the ifers all spring. You know, if everything went right, they were going to be a good team. I don't see it, but look, I've been doing this with you a long time, and I've learned that the book's rarely wrong.
Right.
You know, they're rarely wrong. And so when they make somebody a favorite, there's a reason why they make them the favorite. And I think a lot of that has to do with the injury report. You know, it's like you can see, I was talking to Belichick up at Films this week when we were doing the coach podcast, and I'm like, you know, when the line started to move, you know, that Indy line against Minnesota was what, 6.5, 7, right? And then all of a sudden it started to move really quickly down to 5.5, and it was moving. And then Steichen had not said a word to anybody, right? And I said that kind of thing you just knew it was Flacco was going to be the starter. And I don't know how they get that information. I've been in buildings before, and some people in the building don't even have that information, yet the book is able to figure this out. And I don't know how they do it. Momentum. But a team coming off of a bad loss to the Patriots is now favored against a team that has found ways to win 6 games. It doesn't make sense to me. But I've learned in this profession, just looking at this from a different lens than being in the league, that they're never wrong.
Speaking of coaching, so maybe it's a little awkward because my buddy Matt Patricia's there as well. Has Bill Belichick said anything about Dan Campbell? For those that don't know, I'm pretty sure Belichick started his career coaching tight ends with the Lions. Okay, so he has a little history there with the Lions. Has he said anything about Campbell? Because, Michael, I was completely wrong on this dude. That is a legit Super Bowl team, and he has just built it. Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell have done something very special with the Detroit Lions. Just curious, have you guys had conversations about what's happening in Detroit?
We talk about Detroit really and about how team building matters, right? I mean, that's been most of our conversations have been, look, the Bengals, go ahead and take Chase. He's a great player, and he's an all-pro. I think he made the all-Belichick team too. But, that left the Lions with Penny Sewell. And Penny Sewell, to me, is the best tackle in football. Penny Sewell is going to go in the Hall of Fame. I mean, how many guys do you run trick plays to, right? How many guys do you run? How many offensive line? I mean, Penny Sewell looks like Anthony Munoz, only faster, right? And so we talk a lot about their team building. We talk a lot about how they've been able to structure an offense around what Goff can do, how the offensive line carries everything, how that infrastructure there is the key component to their team, and how they've gotten Goff to play at a higher level with credit Ben Johnson, and defensively how they've prioritized the offensive lines. I think there's nothing, you can't have anything but, and they're tough. I mean, the one thing about this Lion team, we were talking about it this week about how, after you play the Lions, the team that plays them usually loses the next week, right?
Yep. They
get beat up and they can't play in the game. And that used to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. That used to be those kind of teams. That's what we were trying to build in Cleveland. Wanted to be this big physical football team. So I look, there's some elements of this too. Like Ragnow was drafted by Patricia. I think Decker was drafted by Quinn. He was there. I mean, there's some elements that the other staffs have put it together, but give credit to Campbell for bringing it all together, right? And look, they've got a couple breaks here. Think about this. If the Bengals take Sewell, would they be as good offensively? Yeah, they probably would be, because they probably would pay T. Higgins. They wouldn't pay Chase, but they'd have a legitimate starting left tackle, and Burrow wouldn't get the shit kicked out of him every week, and they wouldn't have to pay Orlando Brown all that money, okay? B, if Jacksonville takes Hutchinson, would they have taken Walker? Think about that now. They got 2 gifts laid in their lap, and I'm not saying Chase wouldn't have been a good player for them, but Chase would have moved them away from where their team building was headed, right? Chase would have redirected them. Correct. I'm not saying he's not a good player, but Sewell reinforced who they are.
Identity.
Yeah,
Chase isn't. That's right. Chase is not the Detroit Lions' identity. Penei Sewell is the leader on that team at tackle.
That's right. And so to me, and then they add another guy like Sewell because Balky decides he watched tape on Walker in practice with Georgia, and Walker was the better athlete, had the better upside. When, meanwhile, Hutchinson was doing it in the Big Ten on a big stage. Not that Walker didn't play in the Southeast Conference. I get that. But that's a huge mistake. They get Hutchinson laid in their lap, another identity player, right? And they couldn't wait to turn the card in. I mean, look, they did. And then I think the one move that I think gets overlooked too often is they steal David Montgomery from the Bears.
Oh my God!
And they just steal him.
A gift. It's a gift.
$6 million a year. Now they redid it, but they got him for nothing.
Dallas is headed to Atlanta. So Atlanta in control in division. This is desperation time for your Cowboys. And I say that facetiously. So Atlanta's laying 3. Would you do anything with this game?
I like Dallas here a lot. But here's what worries me about Dallas. Well, first of all, let's start. Dallas this year in their passing game has not been the same. And so if you want to know why I keep harping on physicality in the run game, is the Dallas Cowboys is a perfect example. From 21 to 23, they were fourth in EPA on dropback passes, and they were fourth in success rate in that area. This year, they're 23rd. What's the difference this year? Well, you could say, well, they lack no, they have no run game. There's no balance to what they do. They have no balance to what they do. And look, they're 3-9 against the spread in the last 12 games, right? And so to me, you say, well, this sets up perfectly for the Cowboys because they're so bad. They've allowed 12 touchdowns rushing. They're 32nd in EPA on the rush, all those things. But I think last week, if you watch that tape closely, they did a good job on San Francisco. And I think they were able to get their defensive fronts changed a little bit to help them stop the run. And I think this will be a game where Dak will play well because this Falcon team is not very good on defense. They're just not. I mean, they have the two leading sackers are Judon and Grady Jarrett with 1.5 each. They have 6 sacks in 8 games. So I just like Dallas. I think this is the best place for Dallas. They're undervalued. Atlanta, remember, they lost to Seattle at home. If Dallas can play from in front, I think Dallas will win the game outright.
Load up on CeeDee Lamb props because he is the only option for Dak right now.
That's right, yeah. They're trying to trade for we didn't talk about this, but they're trying to trade for a receiver. They've sniffed around Taquan Thornton up in New England. I think they'll try to make that move before the deadline. I know New England wants to trade away Thornton. I think Dallas wants to get a vertical outside guy to help them, somebody that gives them some separation within that and give CeeDee Lamb something. Whether you like Thornton or not, that's a question or not. But they did like him coming out. I think there was some other teams that did, so maybe they'll trade for Thornton.
All right, let's get to our DraftKings bet highlight, and it's a good one. This is a marquee matchup. They should flex this to later in the day. New England is at Tennessee. We're TBD on quarterbacks. You can lay 3. It's mostly 3.5, but if you want to lay 3 with Tennessee, you can find a 3, and you're going to lay the 3.
I only want the 3 here, and the reason I do is because I think the Titans are really good on defense. I think it'll be really hard. I think Drake May, even if he plays, I think he'll have a hard time. The problem with the Titans is they've turned the ball over 16 times this year. But the Titans are the 4th best third down team in football. They really make it hard for you. Their matchup against this offensive line for New England is not very good. New England will struggle to block them on the road with crowd noise. It has this, to me, this is a game where it goes under. And when you get humiliated like they did in Detroit, and I know the Detroit syndrome, you don't bounce back, but that wasn't a physical, typical Detroit game. Detroit didn't even throw for 100 yards in the game. So I'm going to go against that. The Titans are the worst offense facing the blitz in the National Football League. I get all those things, but this is a winnable game. And these are the kind of games where if you're Tennessee, you don't beat New England here at home, that's a real problem for your team. Yeah, here's the one thing, too. Tennessee wants to redesign their team. I found this fascinating when I was working on them this week. They redesigned their team. They want to have this nickel Cincinnati type of offense. It's bullshit, right? Who wants to copy Cincinnati's offense? I don't know. I don't get it. But this Spears kid, who they think is their loose play back, he could do all these things. His longest run this year is 11 yards. Think about that. 11 yards. And that's the change of pace player. That guy should be at you see that Warren, you see that all over the league where they have the Pittsburgh, they have these change. They make plays.
DraftKings bet highlight, the Titans laying 3, presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. We just have a minute. I do find Chicago at Arizona fascinating because it's a point and a half with Arizona laying it, but a huge bounce back spot for Chicago emotionally. And all of a sudden, Arizona's something. I don't know what they are, but they're something.
Their numbers just don't. They really have a hard time with their numbers, right? They're bad in so many statistical categories on offense, on defense. And look, they can run the ball, and I think they've done a really good job of coaching and developing themselves. But I don't see how I think Chicago should be favored by 3 in this game. I really do. I think Chicago should be the team that's favored. I think Chicago will do a good job defensively. Eberflus wasn't good at the end of the game, but typically Chicago's played good defense. I like that one. I really do. I like Dallas. I like Chicago. I think those 2 road teams could win outright.
Would you lay the 3.5 with Detroit at Green Bay? Quick.
No, I stay away from that. I worry about that one just because I think that field is always problematic for me. And I don't know where Love is. I just don't know where Love is. If Love's healthy, it'll be a high-scoring game.
Who doesn't love Halloween? GM,
does.
enjoy it tonight, Michael Lombardi. Enjoy
I'm
it.
going to have fun.
Thank you, Patrick. GM Shuffle. Thank you, Michael Lombardi. Elliot, thank you. Happy Halloween to all of you. GM Shuffle. We'll see you on Monday.